Hi, dear YouTubers. Welcome to the special countdown session on Tamil Nadu sets. You know, hundreds of people study with Vallath from Tamil Nadu for PSC exams, PGTRB exams. You can join those courses if you want and pass Tamil Nadu sets, and you will be able to join these other courses and pass with ranks. That is what many people from Tamil Nadu are doing. Ankita, you won't believe this.
Yes.
So many of the Tamil students we have are getting ranks and passing.
Yes. So many people from so many of our courses are becoming assistant professors with wonderful ranks. It's a wonderful journey we are witnessing over here. It's beautiful.
It is indeed. Ankita herself started her journey like this.
Yeah.
And she's also studying more and more to scale greater heights. I wish all of you babies my best. My best wishes to all of you. So here we are, Ankita. TNZ countdown session 14. There are altogether 15, right?
Yes.
Yes, before the exam, this will be tremendous support. Ankita, will you please read and explain? I'll also add to what you say.
Okay. Yeah. So, who said that the effect of mimicry is camouflage? It is not a question of harmonizing with the background, but against a mottled background of becoming mottled. So, who talked about mimicry thus? Was it Homi Bhabha, Edward Said, Sigmund Freud, or Jacques Lacan? So, this particular theorist and scholar, he talked about mimicry as a threat, where you are not trying to mix yourself with other people, but you are posing it as a threat. So, who was it? It was Jacques Lacan who talked about mimicry thus.
I'm sure many people would see mimicry and think it is Homi Baba. Ankita, you deliberately put Homi Baba to confuse
Yes.
them. Yeah, indeed, Homi Baba talked about mimicry. He talked about ambivalence. And what are the other concepts of Homi Baba?
Hybridity.
Hybridity, correct. And that is the post-colonial context. Jacques Lacan, what are the important concepts of Jacques Lacan? He talked about the mirror stage. He talked about the semiotic, the symbolic, real, imaginary, symbolic. That is the three stages of the human mind that Lacan talked about. And he also talked about the semiotic and the symbolic, which later Julia Kristeva applied to women's writing also. Jacques Lacan has written one book called Ecrits, Ecrits. That is the only book that he was published in his lifetime. Other than that, he wrote a lot of essays only. Lacan was called the French Freud, right?
Yes.
He reinterpreted Freud. While Freud talked about the iceberg principle of the human mind, Lacan talked about real, imaginary, and symbolic. Imaginary begins with the mirror stage. Real is a time of need, and imaginary is the time of demand. Symbolic is the time of desire. That is what he said. What are the major concepts and books written by Edward Said, the post-colonial critic? Obviously, all of you know Orientalism, 1978, and also Culture and Imperialism of 1993, which is like a sequel to Orientalism. Edward Said also has written a book called Beginnings. He wrote On Late Style. Where was he from? He was from Palestine. And Said also talked about contrapuntal reading, the world, the text, and the critic. That's an important word by Said. Right? Can you add something more to it, Ankita, or shall we
Also,
move?
yes, a very important concept propounded by Said was the idea of secular criticism. Often this question is asked that who has talked about the idea of secular criticism. So in this text, the world, the text, and the critique, he very specifically has dedicated a whole chapter to this idea of secular criticism. Do read up on this idea and this text. The world, the text, and the critique.
That's right. That's a very important concept that Ankita has told us. Please look it up. Okay. Ankita, over to you.
Who among the following has used wind as a trope in his poetry to spread the message of revolution and change through the poet prophet figure? Was it Wordsworth, Coleridge, Byron, or Shelley? This person has written an ode which is divided into 5 sections in 1819. Yes, it is Shelley who wrote Ode to the West Wind, and there he has used west wind as a trope that will bring about revolution and reform.
A trope means a metaphor, a figure of speech. And here he is describing the west wind as destroyer as well as preserver, both sides of the west wind. And he emerges as a Shelleyan hero here. Shelley is emerging as a Shelleyan hero, the harbinger of revolution. Like the Byronic hero, Byron also had a Byronic hero. Byronic hero is a dark character who has been an outcast and he has suffered from the ostracization in the society. But Shelley developed the character of a tyrannical strong man, like in The Triumph of Life by Shelley, The Mask of Anarchy by Shelley. These are all works where Shelley develops the character of a great heroic, prophetic hero. Remember, Shelley also said poets are the unacknowledged legislators of the world. Shelley wrote a critical work, A Defense of Poetry, written against Thomas Love Peacock's 4 Ages of Poetry. Shelley used the pseudonym The Hermit of Marlowe. The Hermit of Marlowe, he wrote. And you must also remember works like The Revolt of Islam, Leon and Sitna, a book was rewritten as Revolt of Islam, right? Yeah, Shelley's odes are also very important. One, Ankita already mentioned Ode to the West Wind. There is also To the Skylark that everybody knows. You should read these poems before the exam. Take a look at it tonight itself. Look at the stanzaic pattern. Is it 5 lines in a stanza like in Ode to the West Wind? Sorry, like in Ode to the Skylark. Or is it 3 lines in a stanza like in Ode to the West Wind? Like that, if you look at the poem, you will be able to get a lot of information that way. Please don't avoid it. Please read the original poems. Ankita, you.
Now you have to choose the wrong statement. First, Marlowe was the first to achieve critical reputation for his use of blank verse, which became the standard for the era. Next, his plays are distinguished by their overreaching protagonists. Themes found within Marlowe's literary works have been noted as humanistic with realistic emotions. And lastly, plays of Marlowe rarely showcase scenes of cruelty and bloodshed and violence. So you have to choose the wrong statement from these 4 statements given.
Maybe the last one?
Yes.
Plays of Marlowe do employ cruelty, bloodshed, and violence. For example, in Tamburlaine the Great, Marlowe's character, the Turkish emperor Bajazeth, is breaking his head on the bars of the cage and dying. So does his wife Zabina. In the same Tamburlaine the Great, second part, I think, he shows a carriage of driven by kings. There is such a lot of spectacle on stage in Marlowe. These are the elements of romantic tragedy. Marlowe and Shakespeare did not follow the classical rules of tragedy and wrote what is called romantic tragedy. Marlowe was a man who lived a very cantankerous life. He was an atheist, he was a spy. And does anybody know who wrote about Marlowe the novel, A Dead Man in Deptford? It is Anthony Burgess. Anthony Burgess wrote A Dead Man in Deptford. And also about Shakespeare, Anthony Burgess wrote Nothing Like the Sun. Nothing Like the Sun. So going back to Marlowe, in Marlowe's plays like Tamburlaine the Great, The Jew of Malta, Edward II, there are so many very cruel scenes. In Jew of Malta, there is an orgy of killing. He's poisoning wells, he's sending poisoned rice to a nunnery. And all this is actually anti-classical, which is characteristic of much of Renaissance or Elizabethan drama. Okay.
The ballad Soprano by Ionesco is an example of what? Is it theater of the absurd, kitchen sink realism, drawing room comedy, or agit-prop drama? It represents a particular school, that is, it represents theater of the absurd. Theater of the absurd.
Yeah. Ionesco is a Romanian writer. The Bald Soprano, if I remember, is the first play of Ionesco
Yes.
or one of the first. Yeah, the
The
first play
first.
of Ionesco. It is a total absurd play where two couples, the Smiths and the Martins, are talking to each other. They are repeating themselves. They make no sense. That is how the play Bald Soprano is written. Ionesco is also the writer of Chairs, Rhinoceros. Chairs is a play where there is an old man and an old woman. They are rearranging chairs and getting ready for some guests. And nobody comes because the guests are all invisible. There is only one orator who comes. And at the end, the old man is jumping from the window and committing suicide. And the orator gives the old man's message. He writes it on a board on the stage. And the writing on the board is in the nay, in the num, NWNWNWE. I have memorized it. It is total nonsense. In the nay, in the num, NWNWNWE. This is what he writes. Total nonsense. So this is a play that shows the total breakdown of language and communication. You can't make sense in this world. Absolutely, theater of the absurd it is. And Rhinoceros is a play that shows the character Berenger, Berenger, Berenger. And this is a play where everybody is turning into a rhinoceros. It shows how everybody just follows blindly what other people are doing, and there is no originality. You don't think about what you're doing, and these are some of the plays by Eugene Ionesco. He's a very important writer of the theater of the absurd. Kitchen sink realism derived from angry young man movement. Kitchen sink realism involves people like Arnold Wesker, John Osborne himself, Sheila Delaney. They showed the squalor and misery of working class life down to the kitchen sink. That is how they showed it. Drawing room comedy is the opposite of kitchen sink drama and angry young man movement. Drawing room comedy is upper class and very brilliant. Settings will be there. Examples of drawing room comedy writers are Noel Coward, Terence Rattigan, etc. Drawing room comedies were written by many people. They are the mainstream plays. Agit-prop drama is Marxist. It has a message to the people. It is called agitation propaganda drama. Waiting for Lefty by Clifford Odets is a famous agit-prop play. Am I boring, Ankita? Am I boring you?
No.
So much and blah, 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 I'm saying, and people will be thinking, oh my God, we can't take it anymore.
Actually, this will give them hints or the points of departure from where to study further. These options themselves are like points of departure for them, I guess. Yeah.
Very good, yes. All right, the next question.
Okay. So, which work among the following has been delivered under the similitude of a dream? Is it St. Augustine's Confessions, John Bunyan's The Pilgrim's Progress, Jonathan Swift's A Tale of a Tub, or Thomas Browne's Religio Medici? So, one of these works is a very conscious, not a conscious, it has been presented as a dream allegory.
That is a very good question. This is a quotation from the work itself. I think it's Bunyan's Pilgrim's Progress.
Yes.
Delivered under the similitude of a dream. That is what it is said. It's a dream allegory. The protagonist, Christian, is going in search of celestial city, and all this is seen in a dream. Christian is going with a burden on his back, and he is warned by the evangelist. He understands that the city of destruction will be destroyed. So he is undertaking a journey alone at first. In between, he is joined by faithful, and faithful dies. He is joined by hopeful. And this journey involves a lot of hurdles, like he has to pass the Slough of Despond, the interpreter's house, delectable mountains, giant despair, and such monsters he meets. And in Vanity, the city of Vanity, there is an ongoing fair presided over by Lord Hategood, and he is losing faithful there. There is Apollyon, monster whom he meets there. So many such people, and finally he reaches the celestial city. Pilgrim's Progress also has a second part where Christian's wife, Christiana, is undertaking more or less the same journey. Great Heart and the maid Mercy are accompanying them. Bunyan's Pilgrim's Progress is an allegory of ideas, and there are also political or religious allegories like Absalom and Achitophel, Fairy Queen, etc. And allegory is a story where one story is told, but it is actually meaning another story. Right? Thank you. That is a good one. Uh-oh, Ankita.
Yes.
Speak about it.
So, as you all know, we recently got a wonderful result for our RPSC course. So many people became assistant professors with wonderful ranks. And that's why we are back again with a wonderful RPSC assistant professor course. So, I have already told you guys about it, right? But this batch started from 3rd February, and the classes are going on right now. So, as Vallath is very famous for it, we will be giving you live classes and also lifetime access to all our recorded sessions. We will give you ample quizzes and revisions for intensive practice and many PDF notes.
And 24/7 support. I just finished 7 to 9 class. You don't have to worry that you're joining late. One thing is for sure, Ankita. Those who take our course and study well, they will surely pass.
Exactly.
Okay.
The monster error is in which book of Fairy Queen? Book 4, book 2, book 1, or is it book 6? Again, it's an epic poem by Spenser, Edmund Spenser. And there are 6 books. And in one of these books, we see this monster error who is defeated by Red Cross Knight.
Monster Error is attacking Red Cross Knight and causing trouble to him, so it must be in book 1.
Yes.
Because in the first book, we have the adventures of Red Cross Knight, who is protecting Yuna and finally getting betrothed to her. Yuna is true church, and opposite Yuna, there is Duessa, the false church. In the second book of Fairy Queen, we have the adventures of Guyon, Knight of Temperance. In the third book of Fairy Queen, we have Britomart, representing chastity. Britomart is a female warrior. In the fourth book of Fairy Queen, we have Triamond and Campbell, representing friendship. In the fifth book of Fairy Queen, we have Artigel, representing justice. And in the sixth book, we have Calidor, representing courtesy. These are the 6 books, and the 6 knights. They are all representing an Aristotelian virtue. And in Fairy Queen, we see Gloriana representing glory, Queen Gloriana. Her suitor is Arthur, representing magnificence. The last bit of Fairy Queen is Mutability Canto. It represents constancy. Fairy Queen is written in the style of a courtesy book. The source of Fairy Queen is Ariosto's Orlando Furioso and Tasso's Jerusalem Delivered. And the stanzaic pattern of Fairy Queen is Spenserian stanza. Right? Great. Next question.
Roman Jakobson, Boris Eichenbaum, Viktor Shklovsky, and Jan Mukharovsky. All of these scholars, they were all part of which school of theory and criticism? Was it Frankfurt School, Yale School, Chicago School, or Prague School? All of them belonged to Prague School, and the school was formed in 1926 They were theorists of linguistics and semiotics. They developed various methods of structurist literary analysis.
The Prague school is associated with Russian formalism. There is originally in Russian formalism a school called Opoyaz and also Moscow Linguistic Society. And Frankfurt School is a group of theorists who are related to Marxism, and they are Adorno, Horkheimer, Walter Benjamin, etc. The Yale School is a school of deconstructionists. Yale School of Deconstructionists. Chicago School in Literary Criticism refers to the Neo-Aristotelians. They are R.S. Crane, Elder Olson, Richard McKeown, Wayne C. Booth. Their major book was Critics and Criticism, Ancient and Modern. In linguistics, I think there is Geneva School. Right. Ankita?
An early and primary event in this novel is the abandonment of a passenger ship in distress by its crew, including a young British seaman named Jim. He is publicly censured for this action, and the novel follows his later attempts at coming to terms with himself and his past and seeking redemption and acceptance. So, who wrote this novel? Is it by H.G. Wells, Rudyard Kipling, Joseph Conrad, or E.M. Foster? So, it is novel Lord Jim, and it was written by Joseph Conrad.
Joseph Conrad is an early 20th century writer in Britain. He was originally from Poland. His name was Joseph Korzeniowski, and he became a very important early modernist. Joseph Conrad's first novel was Almayer's Folly. Almayer's Folly. After that, the next major novel is Nigger of the Narcissus. Nigger of the Narcissus. It is based on Narcissus, a ship on which James Waite, a black man, is dying of tuberculosis. Heart of Darkness, as everybody knows, is his most famous novel. You should also read Heart of Darkness. There will be quotations and textual details from Heart of Darkness asked. It is a story told by an unnamed narrator who is telling the story of Marlowe traveling to the Congo, the interior of Congo, to meet Kurds. And Kurz dies saying the horror, as you all know. Then Lord Jim is the next novel. Lord Jim is the story of Jim abandoning his ship and going to a Patusan island where he comes to be called Tuan Jim or Lord Jim. He has also written many other novels like Nostromo. Nostromo is set in an imaginary Latin American country. Under Western Eyes is based on Crime and Punishment of Dostoevsky. And he has also written The Shadow Line, one novel. Then The Rover. Rover is a novel by Conrad, and it is also a play by Afra Ben. And there are many other works like that Joseph Conrad has written. He's a very important early 20th century writer. Yes.
The Threnodiia Augustalis is a 517-lined occasional poem written by Dryden to commemorate the death of Dash in February 1685. So for whom was it written? Was it Thomas Shadwell, Charles II, William Davenant, or none of the above? Dryden was one of the most influential writers of Restoration. He lived from 1631 to 1700. He was always pro-monarchy, and he had written this occasional poem to commemorate the death of Charles II.
Augustalis. Augustus means king. Threnodiia means elegy. So it is for the elegy for the death of a king, as obvious from the title itself. John Dryden was a Restoration period writer who lived in the time of Charles II. When Charles II came to power, John Dryden wrote Astrea Redux. The title means Justice Restored. He also wrote another poem addressing Charles II called To His Sacred Majesty. Just before Charles II came to power, however, he had written a poem about Charles's enemy, Cromwell, heroic stanzas on the death of Oliver Cromwell. So he wrote an elegy for Cromwell as well as for elegy for Cromwell's enemy, Charles, both. Now, Dryden's most famous works are the three satires, Astrea Redux, the Medal, Absalom and Achitophel, the Medal, and Macflecno. He wrote these against the Whigs, Shaftesbury, the Duke of Monmouth, and Shadwell. And Dryden himself was a Tory. Apart from these poems, Dryden has also written plays, starting from the Wild Gallant and the Indian Emperor. He has written one play called Aurangzeb, and also one on the story of Antony and Cleopatra called All for Love. Dryden has also written prose works and critical works. He was called the father of criticism by Johnson. His major critical works are of dramatic poesy, which is in the form of a dialogue between four characters, Crites, Eugenius, Lycidius, and Neander. And just before he died, he wrote Fables Ancient and Modern, which had a preface to the Fables. Preface to the Fables was published in 1700. Wow. Next.
Okay. In Praise of Folly by Desiderius Erasmus attacks what? Malpractice in medicine, superstitions and religious corruption, gluttony and debauchery, or adultery. It is attacking something in very particular. It is attacking superstitions and religious corruption.
Right. Folly means the mistakes made by man, and it takes the form of superstitions and religious corruption. Desiderius Erasmus was a Dutch scholar, and he was a humanist. He was called the Prince of the Humanists. He lived in the house of Thomas More when he wrote this. The Latin title, the original title, is Morae Encomium, based on punning on the name of Thomas More. And Erasmus traveled in England, and he took part in the religious changes that were happening at that time. He was interested in translating the Bible. He wanted to go back to the original Greek and Hebrew versions of the Bible, and he made a translation of the Bible himself. He's a very important writer of the Renaissance period.
For the time being, a Christmas oratorio it's a long religious poem by Dash, written in 1941 and 42 and first published in 1944. So it was by Tom Gunn, W.H. Auden, Dylan Thomas, or Louis MacNeise. It is by W.H. Auden, one of the poets of the 1930s. He was a Marxist. And in this poem, it is a series of dramatic monologues spoken by various characters on Christmas. And it's a very long religious poem.
Right. W.H. Auden, one of the 30s poets, along with Stephen Spender, Louis MacNeise, Christopher Isherwood, then Cecil Day Lewis, etc., was, as Ankita said, a partly Marxist poet, which is why he was called a pink poet. Auden was also a bisexual poet like all the others. All these people were associated with Oxford. And he also wrote industrial imagery, for which they were called pile-and poets. Very important poems of W.H. Auden are prescribed in universities. The Unknown Citizen, Funeral Blues, September 1, 1939, In Memory of W.B. Yeats, etc. His longer poems include The Age of Anxiety, The Shield of Achilles, and also The Orators. He has also written verse plays along with Christopher Isherwood. W.H. Auden and Christopher Isherwood wrote verse plays. Because he emigrated to America and lived there, he got Pulitzer Prize for The Age of Anxiety. A Pulitzer Prize is given only to writers who live in America. So he got the Pulitzer Prize for The Age of Anxiety. Okay, Ankita.
The Staple of News is an early Caroline era play. A satire by whom? Is it by Ben Jonson, Shakespeare, Thomas Nash, or John Marston? It is by Ben Jonson. Also, his important plays are The Devil is an Ass and also his comedies of humor. But The Devil is an Ass has been asked many times, and so is The Staple of News.
Well, Ben Jonson, as Ankita said, wrote comedies of humors. His most important plays are Volpone or The Fox, Epicene or The Silent Woman, Bartholomew Fair, and The Alchemist. These are very highly acclaimed plays, and they are very often prescribed in university syllabi. However, the later plays of Ben Jonson, like Staple of News and Devil is an Ass, are also important, but they are very controversial plays also. Ben Jonson's Volpone or the Fox is the story of Volpone. He is pretending to be ill and dying so that he can get gifts from his would-be heirs, like Corbaccio, Corvino, Voltaire, Sir Politic would-be, etc. Then Epicene of the Silent Woman is the story of Morose, the bachelor, who wants to marry a woman who will not make noise. Cutbeard, the barber, brings one Epicene to him, but later it turns out that this woman is making noise and he asks Epicene to be taken away. Then we realize that Epicene is actually a boy in disguise. The Alchemist is the story during the plague. Lovett leaves his house in the care of his servant, Faze or Jeremy. And Jeremy cheats everybody by bringing Subtle, a con man, a fake man who claims to be an alchemist and tries to make money out of his fraud. Bartholomew Fair is a city comedy which is full of many, many characters, and it shows the lower class life in London. Ben Jonson was a very important neoclassicist also and a friend of Shakespeare. Ankita.
Who was called a most glorious saint and seer by Henry Vaughan? Was it Richard Lovelace, John Suckling, George Herbert, or Thomas Carew? So it was George Herbert, a religious metaphysical poet who was hailed as a saint among the metaphysicals. He is very famous for his religious poetry. And The Temple by Herbert is a collection of 160 religious poems. He also practiced pattern poetry like The Wings. That's a very famous example of his pattern poetry.
Easter Wings.
Easter Wings.
Right. Lovelace, Suckling, and Carew were all cavalier poets. They will never be called saints or seers because they were full of sexual adventures and they wrote in a very physical manner. So Henry Vaughan, George Herbert, Richard Crashaw, and Thomas Traherne were the religious metaphysical poets. George Herbert's The Temple was not published in his lifetime. On his deathbed, he gave the book to the manuscript to Nicholas Ferraz and said, if this will help somebody, please publish it, otherwise burn it. That is how The Temple was published. Richard Crashaw wrote Steps to the Temple because he was a disciple of Herbert. Henry Vaughan wrote important poems like The Waterfall, The Retreat, Silex, Scintillance, etc. Thomas Traherne wrote Centuries of Meditations. Once again, reminding you that our RPSC Assistant Professor course is going on. So is the JKPSC course. We also have a course for UK Polytechnic and Inter-College lecture exams. We have also started WBPSC course for Assistant Master and Assistant Mistress. There is also UPHESC course. If you're interested in any of these, you can start by preparing with us. We will give you lots of live lectures and revisions, topic-wise quizzes and model tests, and PDF notes and extensive support. We wish all of our students should pass with ranks, and our extensive help will really help you do that. The courses are not very expensive given the volume of information that you get. And also, all our lectures are given to you with lifetime access. You can pass many exams with it. It will be a great investment. And compared to all that you get, the courses are very less priced. So that brings us to the end of this discussion. Ankita and me have brought you a lot of important authors. We have discussed those authors with you. I hope you will join us tomorrow also at 9 o'clock for another discussion, and it will really help you score very high marks in the exam. Ankita, let us bring in a lot of diverse authors from all the spectrum, post-colonial Indian, British, American, and also literary criticism and theory, some research methods also, so that our friends who are writing TN set and also Telangana set, that is also coming up. TN set will happen in 15 days or 14 days. So let us help them all, Ankita.
Yes.
Thank you, everybody. See you tomorrow. Bye-bye.
Bye.